You've heard the stories, right? Ghost ships found drifting with no crew, the Bermuda Triangle swallowing vessels whole, ships that just sail over the horizon and are never ever seen again. It's one of the most powerful mysteries of the sea. But what if I told you the truth is actually way more fascinating than the legend? That's the big question we're diving into today. We are going to peel back all those layers of myth and legend to find out what's really going on. We're going on a journey from folklore to physics to find out what really has the power to claim a massive ship in the middle of the ocean. And this quote right here, this is our North Star for this whole explainer. We're not hunting for krakens or paranormal vortexes. Nope. We're looking at the hard evidence, the data, the science, and, the critical human element that can turn a totally routine voyage into a final one. So, before we get into the how they vanish, we need to talk about how many actually do. It's easy to think of these as countless unsolved mysteries, but the reality? Well, it's a story told with cold, hard data. 27. That's it. That's the total number of large ships lost across the entire planet in 2024. Now look, every single one of those is an absolute tragedy for the people involved, but it's also a finite, measurable number. And that tells us this isn't some unknowable, mysterious force at work. And check out this trend, because this is the most important part. Just a decade ago, that number was over 100. Last year, 35. This year, 27. The global fleet is bigger and busier than it has ever been in human history, and yet seafaring is becoming dramatically safer. That's a huge story right there. So what's actually causing these losses? Well, the biggest slice of the pie by a long shot is something called foundering, which is really just the technical term for sinking. They aren't vanishing into another dimension, they're being overwhelmed by the sea. Sure, fires and piracy are real factors, but succumbing to the power of the ocean is still the #1 cause. But disappearing doesn't always mean the whole ship goes down. Get this, in 2024 alone, 576 shipping containers were lost overboard. They just fall off, and they become massive hazards on the seafloor. And with 116 piracy incidents, sometimes a ship vanishes from the NOP because it's been deliberately taken offline. All right, so we've seen the numbers. Now let's dig into the reasons. And we can pretty much group them into 3 main buckets: the incredible power of nature, the potential failure of the machine, and of course, the critical factor of human error. Let's start with nature. For hundreds of years, sailors would come back to port with these terrifying stories of rogue waves, literal walls of water that would just explode out of a calm sea. And for just as long, scientists basically patted them on the head and said, "That's nice, but impossible." They dismissed it all as folklore. But then, everything changed. This timeline right here marks the exact moment the myth became cold, hard fact. Up until 1995, rogue waves were legend. Then, on New Year's Day 1995, we got proof. And there it is, 25.6 meters. That's almost 84 feet tall. That was the height of the Dropner wave, and it was scientifically measured by a laser on an oil platform in the North Sea. This thing was more than twice as tall as any of the waves around it. And just like that, the sailors' folklore was confirmed physics. Okay, this brings us to the most famous legend of them all, the Bermuda Triangle. The legend says, paranormal forces, a uniquely dangerous patch of ocean. But the ledger, the actual data, tells a totally different story. It's a place with a ton of ship traffic and, yeah, some pretty nasty weather. Statistically speaking, it's not any more dangerous than other busy, stormy parts of the ocean. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is the official statement from NOAA. That's the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They don't mince words. When you actually account for the weather and the huge number of ships and planes passing through, the rate of loss isn't abnormal at all. It's about probability, not paranormality. So it's not always the awesome power of the ocean. Sometimes it's the weakness of the ship itself. The massive carrier, the MV Derbyshire, was lost because of a structural failure during a typhoon. Then you have hidden dangers, like when someone misdeclares a cargo of lithium-ion batteries, which can cause fires that are basically impossible to put out. And there's the strange case of the Joyita, which was found adrift, totally empty, because corroded pipes likely convinced the crew to abandon a ship that was actually perfectly buoyant. Now let's talk about a modern mystery. Back in 2007, a yacht called the Cause 2 was found just drifting off the coast of Australia. The engine was running, a laptop was on, the table was even set for lunch, but the 3-man crew? Gone. It had all the makings of a classic, totally baffling ghost ship story. The truth, though, as pieced together by the coroner, was just heartbreakingly human. It was a tragic chain reaction. In seas that were rougher than they expected, one of the men probably fell overboard. A second man tried to rescue him and was also lost, and then the third was lost trying to save the other two. A simple, terrible accident that cascaded into a triple tragedy, leaving a silent, empty vessel behind. And that really brings us to the final factor, the human element. The loss of the cargo ship El Faro back in 2015 is just a gut-wrenching modern example. The official investigation showed how a series of decisions, which were based on weather information that was hours out of date, led that crew to sail straight into the eye wall of a monster hurricane. It's a stark reminder that even with all our satellites, human judgment is still the most critical system on board. So, with all these dangers, rogue waves, mechanical failures, human error, why on earth are ship losses going down? Well, the answer is technology. It has completely changed the game, making a true untraceable disappearance incredibly rare today. The first line of defense is called AIS. The easiest way to think about it is like air traffic control, but for the sea. Every large ship constantly broadcasts its position, its speed, its course, everything. It creates this living digital map of all marine traffic, making ships visible to everyone, even in the dead of night, in the middle of the ocean. But what happens if disaster strikes so fast that nobody has time to even make a radio call? That is what the EPIRB is for. This is the ultimate lifeline. It's a distress beacon that, if a ship sinks or capsizes, automatically activates. It floats to the surface and sends a rescue signal with its exact GPS coordinates straight up to a satellite. And this is just how effective it is. The beacon activates. A satellite in orbit instantly picks up that signal and relays it. And within minutes, literally minutes, a rescue coordination center on the ground knows exactly who is in trouble and precisely where they are. This tech turns a potential Vanishing Act into a targeted search and rescue operation. So, with all this technology in place, the very definition of a ship disappearing has fundamentally changed. For a vessel to truly go missing without a trace today, something absolutely exceptional and catastrophic has to happen. And yet, some still do. So why? Well, because sometimes reality is faster than technology. An instantaneous event, like a direct hit from a rogue wave, can destroy a ship before any beacon has time to activate. A sudden, ferocious cargo fire can cause a total power loss, silencing every system all at once. And, tragically, some vessels are simply operating outside the rules, which means they might not even have this life-saving equipment on board in the first place. So what's the takeaway here? The age of sea monsters and paranormal triangles, that's probably over. We've replaced mystery with data and physics. But the age of risk, that is far from over. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. As we rely on global shipping for almost everything in our lives, our phones, our clothes, our food, are we paying enough attention to the real people and the complex systems that breathe these very real risks for us every single day?